of the things that I find most is that deciding on the right thing to do is a really critical aspect. So, we need to balance between compliance, as I mentioned, the regulatory compliance and the safety of the patients. So those would be the must-haves with some real-life constraints. So the budget is usually very limited. Okay, these companies are raising funds from round to round. They don't have any income usually. And everything that they do is very, very expensive. The timelines are very slow. So combine expensive and slow, investors don't like it, okay? So it's a high risk investment. And on the other hand, it's really hard not to overkill with your development efforts. So doing one study too many could actually deplete your budget to a degree that is really a risk from a business perspective. So the balance of doing the right thing at the right time is really something that startups challenge with. Now, add on that usually startups are very small teams. So I find sometimes companies as small as two scientists and a CEO, and they rely heavily on external resources. So those would be contract manufacturing organizations or CROs or consultants. Either way, there is a lack of the big picture many times. So each one of those service providers would see the situation from their perspective. They might have a conflicting position even, like the risk appetite. Okay, my CMO wouldn't care too much about well, they would, of course, but their main intention is to make this batch successful, and they don't see the big picture of me having to balance between the clinical budget and the CMC budget and my salaries and everything else. So really there is a conflict between the different perspectives, and those companies, as I mentioned, are sometimes almost virtual. So it's really hard to find the sweet spot between all those moving parts. And on the other hand, not doing something or correcting things later on in the program, the more we advance in the clinical development, could also cost a fortune and sometimes be too high of a regulatory risk that companies are basically stuck with past decisions, and investors don't like it either. So as no matter how you look at it, from day one of the project and all the way through the market, there are risks that loom everywhere. And as I said, they're usually around finding the right balance between the development activities that we do and balancing the budget and all the real life constraints. Yeah, so that's why we call it the funnel of death, because basically, if you look at the number of companies that go out on the drug development journey, we start with 1,000 candidates, and it gradually decreases over time. So it's not only the challenge of finding a safe and effective drug, it's also all the other challenges. So we need to prove that it's safe and effective. It costs a lot of money. It takes a lot of time. We need to make this drug in sufficient amounts for the clinical trials. So we need to find the right manufacturing process. So all these things really can not work, basically.